Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of today's top stories. Alberta signs a new energy deal with Ottawa and gets one step closer to its wish for a pipeline to the West Coast. Plus, Supreme Court of Canada issues a landmark ruling on intimate partner violence, opening the door to civil lawsuits. And we meet a local resident who's sounding the alarm about an intersection he says is unsafe.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. The federal and Alberta governments have put pen to paper and signed an agreement that could see construction on an oil pipeline to the West Coast start as early as September of 2027. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith signed the deal Friday in Calgary. The agreement would see Alberta submit a proposal for a new bitumen pipeline to the Major Projects Office by July 1st, and the federal government designate it as a project of national interest by October 1st.
The proposed West Coast oil pipeline would transport more than 1 million barrels of oil per day. This landmark agreement builds on the collaboration between the federal and provincial governments following the signing of the Alberta-Canada Energy Agreement, which was signed in November of 2025. Our governments have agreed to make targeted changes to our respective environmental policies that will lead to tangible outcomes that reduce regulatory uncertainty and create the conditions necessary for Alberta to significantly increase its energy production and exports to Asian and other markets.
Earning trust, as we all know, it requires more than just ambition. It requires partnership and it requires cooperation. Cooperation that respects our duty to consult and ensures Indigenous economic benefits and opportunities for co-ownership exist in every project. Cooperation that recognizes British Columbians should share in substantial economic benefits from projects that impact them. And cooperation that will create tens of thousands of high-paying, rewarding, not just jobs, but careers across the skilled trades, engineering, and beyond.
The agreement also sets out a plan to increase the effective industrial carbon emissions price in Alberta to $130 per tonne by 2040. That's well below the national carbon price that is supposed to apply to all provinces and territories, which is $170 per tonne by 2030. The deal signed today also reaffirms both governments' commitment to the Pathways project, a proposed $16.5 billion carbon capture, utilization and storage project. The Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation is demanding a thorough environmental review of the project, while several other First Nations have asked for a judicial review, saying they were not consulted. In a news conference following the ceremonial signing, Premier Smith was asked how the province thinks it will attract a private investor for a West Coast pipeline, while it's also considering a possible referendum on separation.
I think that what we need to do is make sure that the separatist sentiment is not as high as it has been in the last year. When the Liberals got elected, separatist sentiment went up to 42%. In our most recent polling, we've seen that it's somewhere between 33 and 35%, so it's coming down. Historically, it's been under 20%. That's where I'd like it to be again. I'd like for us to have Albertans feel such confidence that Canada is working for them that that separatist sentiment it goes back to historically low levels. We're not quite there yet. There's a few more things that we need to do, but I think these kinds of agreements help to get us there.
In a landmark decision, the Supreme Court of Canada has created a new tort of intimate partner violence that will allow people to sue for damages when they have been subjected to abuse in a relationship. The top court's ruling today comes in the case of a woman who suffered years of physical and emotional abuse by her husband during a 16-year marriage. The court says intimate partner violence is a pernicious social illness deserving the full attention of the law. It says the existing family violence, torts of assault, battery, and intentional infliction of emotional distress failed to remedy the specific wrong to dignity, autonomy, and equality that intimate partner violence creates. The judgment says this form of violence is not limited to physical or psychological abuse, but also tactics of isolation, manipulation, humiliation, surveillance, violence, economic abuse, sexual coercion, and intimidation. Alberta Emergency Health Services, or EHS, has a new name and a new look. EHS Alberta is now Alta Paramedic Health. This new organization will continue to manage all air and ground ambulance services, interfacility patient transfers, and province-wide dispatch operations. Ambulance dispatch is also being modernized to include advanced care paramedic clinicians who will be able to conduct clinical evaluations over the phone. The government says this transition is also about workforce sustainability, including prioritizing the health, safety, and mental well-being of both staff and patients. Complaints have recently been made regarding a particular residential intersection in our city, with one resident demanding changes to make it safer. BCN's Landon Hickok has the story.
Virgil Granfield is a resident who has been living directly off of 13th Street South for the past 20 years. He says dangerous driving and speeding has been a growing problem over the past few years. It is a particular problem for the intersection located nearest to him by 9th Avenue South.
The entire length of 13th Street, right from 3rd Avenue up to 16th Avenue, is residential, schools, and healthcare facilities and seniors facilities. The rate of dangerous collisions is far higher in this intersection. The city knows that. We used to park on the street. 3 of our vehicles in the last 3 years have been totaled on the street. Once when we were unloading groceries, completely totaled. My truck was so totaled that you almost couldn't tell that it was a truck anymore.
The traffic engineers at the city of Lethbridge claim this stretch of 13th Street South is well engineered as an arterial road, considering it used to serve as a horse and buggy route. City data says this intersection ranks 15th overall in collision frequencies between 2021 and 2025, and 3rd place along the whole of 13th Street. There were 34 total reported collisions, resulting in 10 minor injuries during that time frame.
We are serious about road safety, and we take every, incident that involves road safety seriously. In the short term, we are going to trying to create this year a left turn from both sides, so that can have a protected signal for green, like turning left. So that will reduce the collisions and also provide safety to pedestrians.
But Virgil says that doesn't reflect the reality of incidents that occur here.
The city knows from its statistics that this intersection here has the highest rate of dangerous collisions for any neighborhood in the city. That's right-angle collisions, collisions that are most likely to injure or kill somebody. We've had 2 incidents in the last 2 months of pedestrians or cyclists being hit at this intersection. The way that they're approaching things is basically waiting until somebody gets killed before they actually really do anything.
It all comes down to driver action, pedestrian action, and cyclist action. Like, everybody has to share the road. Pedestrians have to look both ways. Make sure you're crossing on a crosswalk. Slow down and pay attention in that area. It is a big area. You got a school nearby, you got the hospital on the other side. So there is lots of traffic, and basically it's just the volume of traffic going through that increases the chance of collisions and or injuries.
Data claims there are about 11,000 trips made along 13th Street on a daily basis. That's about 4 million trips each year. For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Thank you for that, Landon. Well, seniors in Picture Butte could soon have access to a more modern and expanded living space as Green Acres Foundation prepares for the redevelopment of Piyami Lodge, a project aimed at supporting the growing housing needs of older adults in the community. Our BCN's Heidi Echeverria has more.
A total of $5.8 million will be allocated to rebuild the Green Acres Foundation Piyami Lodge and Picture Butte as part of the Government of Alberta's Senior Lodge Modernization Program. The project's total investment is estimated at over $20 million.
It's great news. It's been waiting a long time to get this news, and it certainly will provide a lot better quality housing for our residents. It was built in 1979. And the reason why we had looked at doing this is because the hallways are fairly narrow. The rooms don't have walk-in showers, they have bathtubs, and it's not really wheelchair accessible in a lot of cases. So it's much better for everybody who's living in residence there.
Once completed, the new senior living community will increase capacity from 32 to 50 units, helping meet the growing demand for seniors housing in the picture-viewed area.
It's a two-story building. It's going to have to be constructed in 2 phases because we still have residents who are going to be living there. So it will be half torn down and demolished and rebuilt, and then move into the other half and tear it down and rebuild it.
I have poor eyesight. I can't see. So I couldn't really stay in the house and cook for myself anymore. So that's why I decided to come here. A lot of people don't have families, you know, they're on their own, they need help. And finding decent help is not easy. I think the quality of life is better than in the fact that your meals are provided and you have people around you all the time, which can be a good thing.
All my friends have moved to Lethbridge because the facility here has no air conditioning and the rooms are small, 200 square feet. When we get the new facility, there'll be 400 square feet, and I'm sure there'll be air conditioning in every room. There'll also be walk-in showers.
We're grateful to have the opportunity to provide enhanced services through a better quality building. It's certainly key for the residents who reside there.
Construction is expected to take at least 2 years, with work estimated to begin by the end of 2026 and be completed in 2028. Heidi Chavarria, Bridge City News.
Thank you, Heidi. The Lethbridge Astronomy Society is celebrating a milestone. This year is the 35th anniversary of the opening of the city's observatory. The nonprofit society has prided itself on establishing what they call a top amateur astronomy facility in the country. Over the years, in partnership with the city, the university, and others, they have been able to offer public viewings for many prominent events in the sky, such as eclipses and educational programs for classrooms. Volunteers with the organization say public interest in the night sky has risen in part over NASA's Artemis program.
I think there's just a general increase in the interest of astronomy because of, you know, it's in the news all the time these days, something going on with space science. So we're kind of a local center of expertise for people that are wanting to learn more about that.
We're on the south side of the city, so we have a pretty good view of the southern sky. The northern sky is getting a little more affected by light pollution from the city, but that's a trade-off between convenience and having a reasonably dark sky. And this makes it easy for groups to come down, such as school groups, youth groups, which we've done for more than 35 years. We've done a lot of expansions over the years. The building of the telescope building to house our large telescope, expanding our observing deck. I remember one event was what we call Mars opposition. That's when the planet Mars is relatively close to the Earth, and you can see details on the surface of Mars. And we had a special Mars night. Actually, we had a couple of them, and we had several hundred people arrive, which is a little overwhelming, but it's good to see the interest from the public.
Mars Night, I like that. The Astronomy Society was established in 1988 and it's entirely run by unpaid volunteers. A free 16-day festival kicks off in Lethbridge this weekend with a focus on various mediums of art. BCN's Naveen Day has the details.
It's called the Ideas Store. It's a free 16-day festival of ideas and culture organized by the University of Lethbridge's Department of Philosophy and Critical Thinking and Civic Engagement Lab. It is produced in partnership with several local institutions, and it includes dozens of talks, screenings, performances, workshops, an art exhibit, a storytelling recording booth, and more.
We've got people coming from the LSCO, from Sage Clan, from the Alberta Teachers Association, from the Lethbridge Folk Club, from a bunch of different participating organizations. So different organizations are contributing in different ways. So some have organized workshops, or they're giving talks, or they're contributing sort of speakers for panel discussions.
The hope is to deepen relationships between the university and the city, promote the idea that shared inquiry is a source of community, and foster a space for civil dialogue around issues that Lethbridgians care about. This includes sessions devoted to heavier topics.
There are panels and experts who will be brought in to talk about things like homelessness, things like substance abuse, things like the challenges that we face when it comes to the functioning of our democracy. So we'll have a chance to talk about some of those sorts of things together in person when we have time to do it a little more carefully than we might online.
And in contrast, there are also a variety of fun and crafty events happening. I even heard a rumor about tortilla making.
Yep, we've got a tortilla making workshop put on by our friends at Antojitos, and we've got a jigging workshop, jigging class taught by the people of the Lethbridge and area Métis, and a yoga class from First Thunder Wellness. So it's not all going to be super heavy.
The Ideas Store runs May 15th to 30th at the Penny Building in downtown Lethbridge, 324 5th Avenue South. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Thanks for that, Naveen. Sounds like so much fun. While it is definitely not spray park weather today, local spray parks are officially open for the season. The city's largest splash zone in North Legacy Park is back with full hours from 10 a.m. till 8 p.m. It features 3 fun areas: a tot zone, a family zone, and a dedicated space for kids aged 5 to 12. The Rotary Centennial Fountain at Galt Gardens is also open with 97 synchronized jets that dance with music and lights, and that is open from noon till 6. And the Gyro Spray Park is also open from noon till 6. It's located behind Nicholas Sharon Leisure Center.
Canadian farmers are increasingly questioning if the current economic squeeze is just a normal cycle or something much more permanent. I'm Sean Haney with realagriculture.com. According to the April 2026 Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index from Real Agri Studies, 59% of respondents now believe agriculture has reached a structural breaking point. This means a majority of producers feel the old ways of doing business may no longer be enough for farms to survive. The financial data backs up that concern. Only 14% of farmers say they are better off than a year ago, while nearly half report being worse off. This has pushed the Financial Performance Index to 68. Now that's well below the neutral benchmark of 100. With weak crop margins and trade uncertainty, we are seeing a shifted strategy. 22% of farmers are now seeking or increasing off-farm income to cover debt or capital costs. It is a sobering look at a sector that remains optimistic about future prices, but is clearly bracing for a permanent shift in how the business of farming actually works in the future. For Bridge City News, I'm Sean Haney with realagriculture.com.
A new report commissioned by the Wine Growers of Canada says the sector could be worth an additional $3.7 billion if Canadians drank more homegrown wine. Canada's wine sector is worth more than $10 billion a year, and the industry says a few tweaks like scrapping domestic trade barriers could add billions to the national economy. Wine growers say one of the biggest obstacles is the lack of a national system that allows wineries to ship their products directly to consumers in other provinces. They say that it fragments the market, preventing wineries from growing their sales enough to invest in more acres of grapes and increased production. Transit AT says high jet fuel prices added $70 million in additional costs for March and April compared with the same months last year. The Canadian travel company says fuel surcharges have only marginally offset the higher costs because a large portion of its bookings were made before the crisis caused by the U.S. and Israel's attacks on Iran began. In addition to fuel surcharges on new bookings, Transit says it has reduced its planned capacity for the period from May to October by about 6%. The company has also suspended service to Cuba until November amid a U.S. energy blockade of the island. And now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 434 to 33,833. The Dow was down 537 to 49,526. The S&P 500 was down 92 to 7,409, and the Nasdaq was down 410 to 26,225. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 441 to 105.58 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 7 cents to 2.96 US. Gold was down 111.55 to 45.39.65 US an ounce, and silver was down 7.43 to 75.97 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.79 per bushel, barley is at $7.10, canola is at $16.73, and corn is at $7.72 per bushel. Live cattle were up 183 to 253.90 for the June contract. Feeder cattle were up 110 to 368.68. Lean hogs were down 78 cents to 98.75 for the June contract. And the Canadian dollar was down over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 72.70 US.
Recapping one of today's top stories, the federal and Alberta governments have advanced a climate and energy agreement that could see construction on an oil pipeline to the West Coast start as early as September of 2027. Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith made the announcement on Friday in Calgary. The agreement, which builds on the Memorandum of Understanding that Alberta and the federal government signed back in November, includes a plan to increase Alberta's industrial carbon price, though at a slower pace than previously projected. Prior to gas prices shooting through the roof, the Strait of Hormuz being blocked, and the U.S. and Israel attacking Iran, there were thousands of Iranians in the streets of their country protesting their regime. In the midst of it all, though, is an organization of Iranians who have escaped the dictatorship, but some have been returning, risking their lives to spread the message of Christianity instead of Islam. Stay tuned for the fascinating story of Iran Alive Ministries. That is coming up next. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or our YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our content and our poll questions.